Speaking of climate change, in the day's other news, skies began clearing over Northern California, potentially aiding the crews fighting the state's largest ever wildfire. The so-called Dixie Fire is now twice the size of New York City and only about 20% contained. With smoke dissipating, firefighting aircraft returned to the air today to back up ground crews. The fire has largely consumed one small town and burned more than 600 homes. Meanwhile, in Greece, firefighters spent a seventh day battling a wildfire that's still burning out of control on the island of Evia. The fire has burned some 100,000 acres and destroyed scores of homes and businesses. Thousands have been forced to flee by boats and ferries. Members of the U.S. military will now have to get vaccinated for COVID-19 beginning September 15. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin announced the plan today, and President Biden endorsed it. Officials said the deadline may move up if a vaccine receives full federal approval or if cases continue to rise. They urged troops to act now.
The secretary believes that the men and women of the military, even the ones that have been hesitant, will comply with that should it take that. But what he's asking for in this message to the force today is don't wait. They're safe, they're effective, they work, they make us a more ready force, a more lethal force, and there's no reason to wait for the mandate.
Meanwhile, traffic backed up at Canadian border stops as Americans were allowed to drive across for the very first time in more than a year. Only the fully vaccinated are being admitted into Canada. The U.S. is still keeping its restrictions on Canadians. In Afghanistan, the Taliban's rapid assault captured two more provincial capitals today. The insurgents have now overrun at least 5 key cities in recent days, out of a total of 34, and fighting continues in the others. All of this comes as the U.S. withdrawal is nearing its end, although American airstrikes continue. We'll look more closely at the situation in Afghanistan and America's longest war later in the program. Officials in Mali report as many as 51 people were killed when Islamist gunmen attacked a series of villages on Sunday. It happened near the border with Niger, where extremists linked to the Islamic State group have been active. The attacks came a week after security forces arrested 2 jihadi leaders. Back in this country, the U.S. Senate is on the brink of passing a $1 trillion infrastructure plan. It has drawn broad bipartisan support, and a final vote could come tomorrow. But a different piece of legislation, a Democratic budget resolution, sparked a new fight today. It totals $3.5 trillion over 10 years for social and environmental spending.
We will concentrate on communities that have been too often neglected, including communities of color and Native Americans, by making education, childcare, health care, and housing more affordable. We can give tens of millions of families a leg up.
They call it $3.5 trillion in spending. Nonpartisan experts say those plans would more likely cost Americans about $5.5 trillion. Trillions more borrowing and trillions more spending when inflation is already sticking American families with higher costs.
Democrats say their plan would be fully paid for, largely by tax increases on the wealthy and corporations. We'll take a closer look later in the program. State lawmakers in New York said it may be several weeks before they vote on holding an impeachment trial of Governor Andrew Cuomo. A state investigation has found he sexually harassed 11 women. It also said his top aide, Melissa DeRosa, led efforts to attack his accusers. She resigned overnight. And attorney Roberta Kaplan resigned as leader of Time's Up, a group fighting sexual harassment. She had given legal advice to Cuomo's administration on discrediting one of his accusers. A woman who says she was a victim of Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking ring is now suing Britain's Prince Andrew. Virginia Giuffre filed the federal lawsuit in New York. She alleges Prince Andrew sexually assaulted her on multiple occasions when she was 17. Andrew has previously denied the allegations. And on Wall Street today, falling oil prices pulled much of the market lower. The Dow Jones Industrial Average lost 106 points to close at 35,101. The Nasdaq rose 24 points. The S&P 500 slipped 4 points. Still to come on the NewsHour, we look at the COVID threat in Missouri and how lawmakers are responding in one hotspot. Secretary of Housing and Urban Development Marcia Fudge discusses the tenuous nationwide housing situation. we reflect on the highs and lows of the Tokyo Olympic Games, plus much more.
This is the PBS NewsHour from WETA Studios in Washington and in the West from the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism at Arizona State University.